All right, here we go. Hi, this is Curt,
And Brad Pinsky.
and we are here for another edition of Fire Law Roundup for September 9th of 2024. Brad, go ahead.
Let's start with something that's disappointing. I'm going to quickly say why it's disappointing, then I'll get into the very short facts. My belief has always been that a problem in the department's attitude, like allowing bullying, hazing, sexist remarks, discrimination, is top down. That the leadership says, this isn't going to happen. We're not going to, discriminate. We're not going to have these comments. We're not going to tolerate any of these things. And that's the end of it. And yet now here we are, as you say, down under, headed to Australia, I presume, with the Queensland Fire Department. A decade ago, they were experiencing a lot of harassing, discriminating, obnoxious conduct. And so they appointed a female police officer to serve as the fire commissioner. Now, however, a decade later, we have new allegations of disturbing comments. And I'll go through quickly what they are, but that's what gets me. You have a woman at the helm. So the question is,
well, she was not at the helm. She was not at the helm when she was there from 2015 to 2019.
Oh, okay. So who is there now, man or woman?
It's a man, and I'm not sure. I didn't dive that deeply into it. It looks like Stephen Smith is the current commissioner. Whether he came from the ranks, whether he came from outside, that is not clear. But
okay. So I'm going to make some generalized comments, not directed to him because I don't know anything about the new commissioner.
Let me interject here because this is one of the areas that I'm studying. Okay, for my forensic psychology approach here. And there's an assumption that we have male bullies or male testosterone-laden, ignorant people who are behaving poorly and that we can't stop it. What if that's not the case? What if that's not the case?
That we can't stop it, or that we have males?
That's not the problem. Oh. What if that's not the problem?
Meaning the problem is women?
No, I'm not saying it's women. I'm not saying it's women. What I'm saying is, what if that's not the problem? What if there are people out there, and I use the metaphor of people who are the equivalent of a lightweight wood truss building, and we have not trained our people in building construction. And the number of people out there that fit that definition, according to my research and what I'm studying, is roughly 1 in 10 people. Wow. Roughly 1 in 10 people. And that goes across all demographics. It goes across race. It goes across ethnicity. It goes across gender. High conflict personalities. Some people call them toxic or whatever it may be. Okay. But that means 1 out of 10 women fit that category.
Okay.
And we are not ready to deal. Our officers have not been trained up to that level. It's like our officers are trained to go into fire-resistant buildings like they do in training. And they assume every building is well built and will not collapse. And all of a sudden, real life hits them. They go into a lightweight wood truss building.
Right. And they're not prepared.
They're not prepared. Okay. And then you get a question, whose fault is that? And no, again, I'm not saying that because let me kind of flush it out, because I don't want people sending in hate mail. Okay.
You're getting it.
Yeah, I know. And that's fine. You know what? That's part of doing this. Okay. But that also means 1 out of 10 testosterone-laden men would also be high conflict. Okay. So the question is, are we set to deal with the 1 in 10 that are creating problems for women? Are we prepared for the 1 in 10 women who are going to, in their subjective perspective, they are perceiving things as harassing, when a group of people objectively looking at it may say, that's not. Okay. And then my research, what I want to do my research on is, what's the percentage here? Okay. Because I would say we are not seeing well-adjusted people harassing well-adjusted people. Okay. The 9 out of 10 people who are well-adjusted, we do not see well-adjusted people harassing well-adjusted people.
No, but, and this first incident adds something to what you're saying, though. So the
Yes,
first incident in
it does.
2021 is where a male would ring a bell when an attractive female walks by, so
That's the
everyone could take
headline.
a look.
That's the headline.
Okay, right. Now,
Right.
the one person, your 1 out of 10 is that male. The
Exactly.
problem is the other well-adjusted people, right? And the headline says others may not have been ringing the bell, but they were participating, right? So
Exactly.
the question is, why are they participating?
Exactly. But you see, that's a different, we got a different problem than
Yes.
assuming that this is, because let's face it, we've had women in the fire service now for 60 years.
Right.
60 years.
There's still only 8% of our population.
This has been going on. Okay. And well-intentioned people, no smarter than you and me, no dumber than you and me, can't figure out a solution to it. Well, maybe that's because we're not defining the problem correctly. And we're not approaching the problem correctly. That this is it's a lot more complicated than just saying it's ignorant men and we're gonna put a female police officer in charge of the fire department to straighten things out. That, so no disrespect to her and no disrespect to anyone else who's not a firefighter, but she's got about as much business running a fire department as I have running an aircraft carrier, which is none.
Right. Right. Agreed. Here's my thing.
Mm-hmm.
Forgetting the transition of leadership, whether that was a factor.
Right.
Let's go to what you're saying. We've got one dissident.
Yes.
We've got theoretically 9 other people standing by doing nothing.
Exactly.
Right? So,
and how do we motivate those 9? It's the Rodney King scenario. It's the exact same thing in Rodney King.
Yes.
You've got a couple of bully police officers.
Yes. That
are engaging in that brutality, and you've got 30 others standing around not willing to engage and prevent it.
And say anything. And say anything.
But here's the problem. If you assume all police officers are bad and evil, you come up with a different solution. Then how do we motivate the 30 around them to say something? To say something. That's the challenge.
And the normal,
it's a lot more complicated. It's a lot more difficult.
It is.
But I think it's the right solution.
Because somehow, here's my belief, somehow the person who feels that they can get away with that type of conduct has probably a lot of normal, consistent characteristics. They believe they're above their system.
They may be high performers. And let's face it, they may be high performers. And that's another problem in our culture where high performers get a free pass on things.
Of course.
And if you do my numbers, 1 in 10 high performers is going to be a high conflict personality.
And in the volunteer system, it's not just high performers, and maybe both career and volunteer. It's people who have been here such a long time. We use phrases like, oh, that's just Mike.
That's right.
Well, that's just how he is. He's been like that for 30 years. Don't take it personally. You say to the new person, right? So you're right. We have a different problem than just how do we deal with the 1? It's how do we deal with the quote unquote 9?
But what frustrates me is people want to make this seem like it's a simple solution, that you got to hit these men in the head and get them to behave. It's a lot more complicated than that. And approaches, exactly. But again, it's not the culture that everybody is engaging in this. What we got to do is motivate, again, the Rodney King. We got to motivate the people who are seeing this to get it to stop. And that includes company officers and chief officers to recognize that it's happening. And another problem is very often the person who is at the victim in this case, maybe a low performer, maybe someone who is perceived as being difficult, and it's rationalized as part of the peer pressure that we often see in the fire service when somebody's not conforming, not doing what is expected. Well, we do. And when they're in a protected class, it looks like protected class harassment as opposed to trying to norm their behavior to get them to do what the organization needs them to do. It's a difficult thing. And looking for simple solutions here is, I think, a mistake. And that's what concerns me about people who stay at the headlines. And it's a lot more complicated. So that's... I'll get off my stump right now.
No. Listen, I think for a radio show topic, semi-legal, but legal in nature anyway, that would be the right topic.
Legal leadership and psychology.
But and this may be a Australian thing, but it's not. This is every fire department I've ever been to.
Absolutely. And
You
we're
know,
going to
and
look at another one later on this in last week where I'm sitting there going, really? He got suspended for 120 hours for that?
right.
Yeah, right. And so, and I'm not condoning anything, any of this. Okay. But, where exactly is the line? And my mind always goes to, where is the perpetrator at? Is the perpetrator that 1 in 10?
Right.
Is the victim that 1 in 10? Are they both? Okay. And then how do I, as a leader, get my people that are going to embrace the concept of inclusion in the organization and stand up for and properly handle both sides of that?
You know, I sat in on somebody's class once 2 decades ago, and they came out with great advice that I used when I was chief.
Mhm.
When somebody comes to you and tells you somebody did something, start by not saying who it is.
Yeah.
We take
Yeah.
all bias out. Don't tell me who it is. Tell me what happened.
Right.
And then I'll tell you what the remedy is, because it doesn't matter with some exception. Well, so-and-so was late for work. Fine. Was he a 30-year employee or 30-day employee, right? But when somebody makes a comment or something like, rings a bell when an attractive female walks by, I don't care who you are, right? The penalty needs to be the same for everybody. So evaluate everybody blindly on most of these policy violations and conduct violations.
Mhm.
Maybe then we'll get to a fair result. Because I think part of the problem we have is the leaders aren't punishing fairly, and they're not enforcing the rules
That is true.
fairly.
That is absolutely true. And again, the particular scenario that I see often come up is where we have a high-performing male that is misbehaving in a way and is harassing a low-performing employee, male, female, minority, whatever it may be.
Yep.
And the organization does not want to or is not willing to deal with the high performer, maybe for bias reasons, maybe for conscious reasons. But the bottom line is it's not getting addressed, and it goes on, and the behavior it's indefensible.
Well,
It's indefensible.
Yeah, and look, we'll get off the topic, but I personally think that the high performers are also, more importantly, highly influential. And because they're highly influential and highly respected, we don't treat them the same way as we would treat someone else doing the same conduct.
That's right.
Right. Part of it also is, as the person who would complain, you're 9 other people who just fall in line, right, behind this high functioning, disruptive person. They don't want to test the loyalty of the leadership by going after one of their highly functioning, highly respected people, because then it's him or me, and I'm not, right? And so maybe I'll keep standing there with a blind eye, see nothing, hear nothing, say nothing, but at least no one can point the finger to me that I turned you in.
Well, I know you want to move on, but let me give you one more
Yeah.
hypothetical here, okay? And we're going to take it out of the fire service, because sometimes we can be much more objective when we look at, okay, so now we got a law firm, and the law firm hires 2 associates, and one's a male, one's a female. And we're going to pay both of the associates $75,000 a year. Okay. At the end of the first year, the female brings in $500,000 in billable hours. She's doing
Then
phenomenal.
give me her resume. Right.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Right. The male is brought in 25,000. Okay. At the end of the first year, the female accuses the male of sexual harassment. What do?
Investigate.
Well, theoretically, but we know which way it's going, right? We're not going
Right.
to lose that shining star.
Of course not.
Okay, we can't. Okay, so now flip the script. Okay, at the end of the first year, he's now brought in $500,000. She's brought in 25. She's accusing him, right? And now it becomes a lot more difficult.
Right. Because is she trying to save her job?
Okay, well, is she really being harassed? On the other hand, are we gonna lose this shining star and all that? So now, again, for the lawyers out there and those who just want to stay at the headline level, and we know there's plenty of people, they don't want to get into the weeds on these things. They just want to say, see what I mean? It's those damn guys. They won't get it. There's a lot more to this.
Yes.
And if we're willing to look at it objectively, and I understand I may get some hate mail over this. Send all the hate mail to Brad, by the way.
Feel free. 1-800-GO. Yeah.
Right. But if we're not willing to really look at it we're just going to keep kicking the can down the road. And 50 years from now, somebody else will be here looking at this saying, it's been 100 years. Women have been in the fire service 100 years, and we're still where we were in 1970.
Right. And part of it is, who's going to do that introspective inquiry? Who's going to go into a department, a business, or whatever, and make that determination? Maybe an investigator, maybe not, but that's not investigating just an instance. It's investigating a culture. It's investigating everything about it. So it's not just saying I'm investigating whether you harassed this person. There's a lot more to it.
It is. And people have their biases and agendas when they're coming in doing an investigation as well. And if their focus is it's men are the problem, we've got to fix the men, we're just going to keep kicking the can down the road.
Right. Exactly.
So
exactly. Okay, let's go to St. Paul. We'll pick up some time on this. This is pretty quick. So the city of St. Paul agreed to settle a lawsuit. It's an interesting one. There's a line here that confuses me, but the patient was a male, suffered a stroke. He apparently was having obvious signs like the Cincinnati protocol, but he wasn't transported to the hospital. Now, allegedly, it's because the hospitals
Don't say it. Don't say the C word. But the hospitals were full because of the C word. I didn't put it in the post.
Right.
I didn't put it in the post. But for those of you who are new to our vlog here, YouTube gives us a strike every time we mention that illness that originated.
But this isn't 22,
somewhere.
So maybe not.
No, it's in the.
Oh, that was it?
It was. Yeah, I didn't put it in there because I didn't want to, because then we get in trouble with YouTube when we even mention it. So we don't even want to mention it.
Nope. It's like 2020.
So the hospitals were full because of that illness.
Okay. So they don't transport him. His family's a physician the next day, right? And they were adamant he needs to go. The next day he finally went. It was too late, right? The golden hour of stroke. And that's a silly answer anyway, because they would triage and prioritize, even if they were on divert, you can go by demand, we all know, but for a stroke, you go to the stroke hospital if there is one. In any event, they settled the suit for, $295,000. I caution people when you are looking at like how much is something worth, it's based on the guy's age, right? The guy's probably not working. He's 80 some odd years old, not working. He's, in the ender of life stage. So this $300,000 settlement reflects that. Had this person been 50 and working, we'd be in the 5 to 10 million range. It'd be very different. The big number for plaintiffs' lawyers is what do you lose by not working? That's where the real money is in lawsuits. So kids and old people don't get you as much. In any event, they settled it. You make an interesting point here that, first the court didn't agree with the discrimination allegation, but allowed it to go forward based upon a malpractice. They would have decided the malpractice. Interestingly, I don't believe that EMTs and paramedics should ever be liable for malpractice. It's splitting a fine air, but paramedics and EMTs cannot diagnose. So here they said, well, you didn't diagnose a stroke. Paramedics and EMTs do not diagnose. We follow protocol. We see signs and symptoms, but we can never diagnose. That's the practice of medicine, is diagnosing and treating, right, conditions. Paramedics and EMTs do not diagnose. We don't practice medicine. So, but here, whether the protocol was violated, right, is there's no judgment involved. If you see this is what happens. And if the Cincinnati stroke test or whatever was positive, then you go to the hospital. That's it. Time is of the essence. So
I wasn't able to get the complaint and get any more information than what was in the media, but they talked about the interpretation. And I think you're right, because you've got to interpret the results. Like taking somebody's blood pressure. If you screw that up, you're going to have a wrong blood pressure, and then your protocols now are going to be based on whatever it is. So I think the factual question about the interpretation of the stroke results, and also stroke test results, and also whether or not the symptoms that were related to Parkinson's may have helped or contributed or provided an explanation for why they decided that he was not having a stroke.
Which is possible, by the way. Facial droop and everything can be affected.
The other thing is, to me, the protocol when a doctor is directing you to transport,
Yeah, that's the end of it. You're directed.
You would think. So I think that's another issue. Whether they were right, whether they were wrong on their stroke interpretation, you've got this issue. So I don't know. But anyway,
your refusal better be darn good. I got to say, we just
even the refusal, you know, that's not going to help you. To me, you know, I know.
The refusal, I say, because the refusal forms that I've created for clients and that are a lot of our agencies use around here, goes very much into detail into signs, symptoms. What did you test for? What did you not test for? So the refusal form to me is more like the pre-hospital care report. It's right, but it's based on these. He was competent, had the capacity to refuse care, right? I mean, that's what we're looking at, competence and capacity.
It looks like he wanted to go and they wouldn't transport him.
Yeah, that's a whole different issue.
That's not a refusal issue. That's, you know, and if you have him sign it after you basically forced him not to or refused to it's a phony refusal. Yeah. So, but again, there's some factual questions here. And I think I put some stock in what the judge said. He says that they did, at least as quoted in the paper, that he did, the medics did diligently test those other things. And they just reached a conclusion that was,
when in doubt, get on the phone with medical control. That's the easiest answer. When in doubt, call medical control.
And they may well have, you know, of course, the plaintiff isn't going to say that, but.
Well, yeah. But if they did, they, you know, who knows? Okay. Georgia County. Well, is it?
No, it's Walker
Tennessee.
County. No, Georgia is no, this is a Georgia case.
Oh, state.
It's state law. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we have a class action.
County, Georgia. It's right up next to. It was in the Chattanooga Times, but Chattanooga is right on the state line there with Georgia. I've actually done some teaching in Walker County, in a beautiful area. Yeah, it's a beautiful area.
All right. Well, in any event, we have I can't say I totally understand. I'll summarize as best I can. Maybe you can do a better job than I can. But we have 3 Georgia taxpayers. They filed a class action lawsuit against on behalf of all taxpayers, presumably, and they're challenging the way that Walker County in Georgia is funding its fire and emergency services. And they're claiming that the public safety fee they pay on property is actually an illegal property tax. This is not to say that you couldn't have a legal property tax to do so, but they do it as a fee. In New York, they call this a blue bin fee, the recycling bin fee. It's however many bins your house needs, that's your fee. There is a difference between a fee and a tax like ad valorem taxes are based on the assessed valuation of your property, and you pay so much per thousand or a mill rate or whatever, however you do it, whatever state you're in. Here, it's a fee based, I think they said, on the size of your property, but that means there are some people, if you don't own property, you didn't pay it, or so they're claiming it's improper. This is obviously going to go to the state's constitution and to the various enacting laws to see whether they're allowed to do it. It's easily solved going forward, but going backwards, the question is, you have to remit the funds, and then where do the funds come from?
Yeah.
And ultimately what happens is they come from the next year's taxpayers anyway. So what's the point?
Well, this group of 3 taxpayers, I'm assuming they're taxpayers, they have filed several other lawsuits around the state with other districts that are charging fees instead of taxes. And my sense is, I think constitutionally, in order to impose taxes, you've got to do things in a certain way. It's probably a little easier to assess fees on people, but they're alleging that in order, in Georgia anyway, shouldn't be interpreted as a national type of thing, but in Georgia, a fee has to be associated with some sort of benefit or use. So like you pay a fee for a hunting license, you pay a fee for a boat license, but then you're entitled to do something now because you have that license. But here there is no license, and there's people who get the same benefit that don't pay the tax. So they're alleged don't pay the fee. So they're alleging that it's actually it's a tax, and it wasn't properly authorized. So it'd be interesting.
Yeah. But again, the remedy is usually, okay, we'll tax everybody else to pay the lawsuit loss.
Yeah, you wonder how long this goes on. You end up going back 3 or 4 years. Now you're going to have to take out a bond issue or something to.
Right. And the lawyers love it because they're getting paid you know, a portion of it. So hopefully it's huge money for them, but to
Yeah,
the average
don't expect
taxpayer,
them to want to
10
settle
cents.
quickly.
No. Okay, let's go to Kentucky. Here we go. This is what you were talking about before. We have a now the problem is he's a lieutenant. So
Yes, I agree.
start with when the actor is managerial level or above or rank and above. I don't care if you're management, even if you're rank or above, we have an almost automatic loss if it's true. But so we have a female, we have an officer making a comment about a female subordinate. They got 120 hours of suspension time for making a series of comments about, right, one of the LT's subordinates. And here are the comments, right? The seams of those pants are putting in work. You're getting thick and your thighs are looking proportionate now. I don't even get some of these in fairness, but without commenting on how offensive or not they are, because I just don't totally get them. Don't say shit like that. I don't know what rule to come up with.
And again, I think it's basically comments about appearance. But I actually talked to my wife about this one, and like she's not a firefighter, never been. She's hung around with firefighters all of her adult life anyway.
Yep.
But she said there's got to be more to this, and so she intuitively figured there's got to be something else going on in this case that we're missing. But at any rate, comments about appearance, it's tough because we live with each other. It's not like you work 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. I mean, you're with them 24, 48 hours straight. You cook together, you clean together.
But why do you have to make sexual comments of any nature?
Well, it's kind of like, somebody says, for example, this new diet isn't working. And you say, oh, yeah, well, it seems that those pants are putting in some work. I can see, again, some of it can be in context of a discussion. If you just all of a sudden say it sarcastically and meanly, that's a different thing as well. You're saying it to ridicule, especially you do it in front of a lot of other people to humiliate somebody. So again, I think context is important.
Sure. Look, if they were doing squats and presses and donkey presses, right? Leg work, like tough leg work. And you and I were working out all the time together, right? And you said, I really feel like my legs are getting strong. And like, yeah, they're looking thick. Maybe that wouldn't be offensive.
When I was younger, I had some longer hair than I do now. And I had a captain. He's a great guy. I love him. Captain DeLisi. He later became assistant chief. And, but when my hair would get a little bit long, we'd be sitting in the sitting room and he'd go like this. And the next day I would get my hair cut, But now I wonder if you do the same thing to somebody, that could be offensive. If a male officer does that to a female, saying, hey, your hair's a little long or whatever, you must, well, you wouldn't do that with a female, but your mustache is too long or whatever it may be, comments about appearance are almost unavoidable in our workplace, and you got to be very, very careful. I'm going to start tracking some of these. I want to kind of catalog some of the ones that have been perceived to be over the line, but these are about as close to the line as I could possibly.
Yeah, we're missing context.
I think so.
Missing context. There's no question.
But again, people who stay at the headlines are going to, and unfortunately, some people have already seen comments out there that these guys are ridiculous. They should know better. Please, this is a lot more difficult than.
But the message it sends is clear. Don't even get close to those comments.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So, okay. Well, this one is same shit, different place. I feel like we've reported on this exact same thing numerous times, right? So this is now a Louisiana captain who happens to be the union steward. He reaches, so the board votes that they're going to get a fire chief's vehicle for the commissioners. The union feels that it's a not as important purchase as other equipment that they're lacking. So the union official jumps rank, right? Goes right to the top, so to speak, jumps the chief and expresses his concern while off duty as the union official. I don't think that part would be in dispute.
Mhm.
The chief calls him to his office. I mean, again, same thing, different place, right? But she calls him to his office. Ultimately, he's penalized and then terminated. So, and of course, they're claiming, and let's go back to Pickering. We started this. Well, I guess we'll end it the same way, right? You have to have First Amendment rights. Employees are not protected. When you're speaking as an employee, not protected. When you're speaking as a public citizen, may be protected. And then second part of Pickering, and you, as opposed to Chip, have a 3 kind of part test. But so the second part of that is we've got to be speaking on a matter of public concern. That's where I focus on this one. As a union official, you've said a number of times here, you are not an employee. You're not employed as a union official. You may be an employee who wears that hat, but when you are acting as your union official, you are not an employee. So you meet that test. But whether you're speaking as a matter of public concern, here they're talking about firefighting equipment, et cetera. And the question is that a matter of public concern? They tried to couch it as one, but I don't know what you think. I look at that as right on the line. When you're saying we need this equipment, is it you need it? Is it the department needs it? Is it's needed for public safety?
Yeah, that's a great question. I hadn't really thought about that aspect of it. I just made an assumption that it was a matter of public concern. And I think context may be important here as well. We just got done talking about context, but I tend to think when you're talking about the expenditure of taxpayer funds on 2 equally important things. Are we going to, for example, are we going to purchase new AEDs for all of the engines, or is the chief going to get a new vehicle? There's a public matter. There's a public concern issue. Okay. On the other hand, are we going to, for example, buy the chief a new vehicle or give all the firefighters a raise? Now there's a fair question there. So I think context may be important, but nonetheless, this is really, here in Rhode Island, certainly we would allege a First Amendment violation, but we would also allege an unfair labor practice.
Of course,
that this is inhibiting a union official from being able to speak to the public and bring to the public's attention a legitimate matter of labor concern. Anyway, so. I'm not sure. I believe in Louisiana, they have the right to engage in concerted activities. So I think there would be some protection under there. I'm not sure that they did allege retaliation. So they didn't use the term unfair labor practice, but they did sue, including for retaliation under their collective bargaining laws. So again, state like North Carolina, South Carolina, you're not going to have any protection under that. And then you've got to rely on your First Amendment protection. So, and one of the other allegations here was freedom of association, and the First Amendment also has a right to petition government for a redress of your grievances. When you do that, then the First Amendment Pickering test isn't necessarily applicable, certainly to the right to petition government for a redress of your grievances. So
I'll tell you where they lose right off the bat is when the chief summons the union president into the office.
Where the city loses right off the bat.
The city loses right off the bat. There's no chain of command with the union, right? I always asked my union, will you come to me first with a grievance or with an issue, not even a grievance, because maybe I can support you and I can bring it forward together in place of you, not right. So I requested that you come to me, but I can't mandate that the union come to me. The union deals with the employer, which is not the fire chief in most instances. It's the city or HR or the mayor or whoever. So as soon as I'm reading these facts and see that the chief summoned in the union president, we got a problem. The chief should leave it be. So
I agree.
Well, that's our week.
Yeah, that's going to do it here, and another interesting week, interesting dialogue here, conversation. But if you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing. Please subscribe, and please share. Please click like. That helps us greatly. And that's going to do it for another edition of Fire Law Roundup. Brad, we'll see you again next week.
Take care, everyone.